here at the Lincoln Children's Zoo today, and we're meeting with keeper Johanna. And as you can tell around us, we are in the flamingo habitat.
Yeah, we have 9 flamingos here at the zoo. So there are many different kinds of flamingos, but these flamingos are native to the Caribbean, or kind of off the coast of Florida. Sometimes you'll find these flamingos as well, which is really, really cool to think that we can find flamingos in the United States.
Right. Johanna, as we're sitting here, I can see that there are a lot of differences between the flamingos in this flock. What are you noticing? What are some of the differences between them?
Yes, so in our 9 flamingos, they all look a little bit different, even though at first glance they all look pretty much the same. For example, you might notice that some flamingos are taller than the others. That's the most easiest thing that a lot of people notice, and that is because we have some boys and some girls. In flamingos, the boys tend to be taller, so if you look at our flock, you'll count that we have 7 tall flamingos and 2 short flamingos, so that means we have 7 boys and 2 girls.
So when these flamingos are in the wild, how do they help their offspring survive?
Yeah, so when flamingos lay eggs, because they're birds, so they do lay eggs on their nest and incubate them until the babies hatch, both parents help take care of the baby chick. So fun thing about flamingos is when they hatch, they're not pink. They are gray and fuzzy. So they start getting their very first pink color from their parents. So like many other birds, flamingos regurgitate food for their little ones because the babies are too young to eat the food on their own. So the parents essentially chew it up for them and then feed it to them. But for flamingos, because they have to give them their color, the milk, as it's called, is actually kind of like a reddish pink color.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how they start to give the babies that flamingo pink color.
So when those babies are so little and helpless, what are some things that they do to survive? What are some of their features or traits that help them survive in the wild?
Yeah, so baby flamingos, even though they hatch very small, they pretty quickly learn how to stand up and how to move around. That way they're able to move with the parents to stay safe if they need to, and they're able to start practicing adult flamingo skills like feeding or, talking to the other flamingos, practicing those honks that we've been hearing around us. So a lot of times, you'll see footage of flamingos they look like they're dancing, where they're stomping their feet. That is how they eat and how they stir up food. It helps them find their food. So a lot of times baby flamingos, when they're following around their parents, they see their parents do that and they copy it. And so the baby flamingos will start learning to tap their feet. So they learn a little bit by observing their parents too in that way.
So how does the environment affect the traits of flamingos?
Yeah, flamingos are very well suited to the environment where they live. They live in very coastal areas. They're water birds, which if you look at them, you can tell by their feet that they live by the water because they have webbed feet. So flamingos can swim, and they spend a lot of time in the water because that's where they find their food. So they are built to find food on the bottom, kind of on the sandy bottoms of oceans, lakes, rivers, wherever they are, and they're looking for algae, they're looking for krill and other crustaceans. So those are their food, that's what helps keep them pink. But they're built, you can kind of look at the shape of their beak. It's kind of awkward, right? It bends downward in a really weird way, and it looks like the top of their beak is really, really skinny. But that's because they have to put their head all the way down to the bottom to get food. And as some of them bend their head down to the ground, you'll see that the top of that beak actually fits very nicely on the ground. So when they're looking for their food, their mouth is as close to the food as possible. And the shape of their neck, they kind of have bendy straw necks. Like if you look, they can bend it in an S shape. They can twist their head backwards to preen their feathers or to clean themselves. Yeah, those bendy necks, they help them too to get their heads all the way down to the water and to sweep their head around to find all the tasty, tasty things.
So that would make sense then why the young have a very different shaped beak.
Yes, exactly.
So they don't need to feed themselves. They just need to receive the food from the parent.
And then as the baby flamingo grows, their beak will kind of grow into that shape. But for starters, it's not quite as bent downward.
When we were watching these flamingos eat, I noticed that there was something like some lines in the beak of the adult flamingo. What are those?
Yes. So they look sort of like teeth if you get a close-up look at their beak. They're not teeth, they do have beaks like all birds do, but it's sort of like a comb, right? Like we use to brush our hair. Those are just little tines, little comb pieces that help them filter their food. So flamingos are filter feeders. So when they're eating, you can imagine if you put your mouth down at the bottom of the ocean and try to take a bite of something, you're gonna get a lot of sand, you're gonna get a lot of water and mud and other things that aren't food in your mouth. Well, flamingos don't wanna eat that stuff either, they just want the food. So what they do is they open their mouth just a little bit, and then it's kind of like us squirting water through our teeth, right? So they squirt out all the water and all the sand and mud through those little combs, and then they keep the food in their mouth, and then they can eat it without swallowing any other of that gross stuff. And Tortuga is gonna come kind of take care of you a little bit here. Say hi. Tortuga. Tortuga is one of our flamingos. He's one of our boys because he's one of the taller ones. And what he's doing right now is preening you. He thinks you're a messy flamingo and that your feathers need a little bit of help. So he's just helping you out to make sure that you look your best for the camera here today.
Thanks, Tortuga. So how do the flamingos get their traits? Where do those traits come from?
Yeah, their traits come from, of course, their parents. So any baby flamingo is going to be a combination of its parents. So say the dad flamingo is a really, really tall male flamingo, and maybe the female is a little tall. Well, that baby could be very tall too because it has such a tall dad. Or maybe, its beak, they've got something special with the tines on their beak. They've got a few more. Maybe they'll be better at filtering out food that way. And so that gets passed down to the babies. And of course, a lot of the behavioral stuff they can learn from their parents and the other flamingos around them. They live in big, big groups. And so a lot of times there are lots of baby flamingos growing up together. So those baby flamingos are learning from their parents, from the other adults, and getting to learn and practice those behaviors, like the honks that they make, like the kind of dancing feet they use to find food, all of that fun stuff.
What are some of the ways that flamingos find their mates?
So flamingos, because they're so social, they do a lot of really fun behaviors when it comes time to find a mate. You often will see videos of flamingos, if you look them up, of flamingos walking around and they all are turning their heads one way and then the other and the other. That is part of the ritual of the boys all showing off for the girls. So the boys all get together in a big crowd and then they march, and they all march together and honk, and they're turning their heads this way and that and spreading their wings to look big and fancy, and they're showing off for all the girls. And then the girl flamingos get to decide which of those males they like the best.